Domestic workers number approximately 2 million in Kenya, but because their job is privatized and entails working behind closed doors, they are susceptible to long working hours, poor pay, as well as physical, mental and sexual abuse.
They are enclosed in people's homes. They are working in places whereby even accessing them is very hard. They are working in places whereby they even feel, that freedom of going outside and interacting is also enshrined. There's still a lot of struggles for domestic workers to be recognized as workers.
A majority of them work without clear terms of employment and are excluded from the scope of labor legislation.
You come in, you accept that this is the kind of job that you're taking, but there's no defined roles or descriptions of your jobs that are put down for you as a worker. So you may find that someone is taking domestic work in that particular household, and tomorrow maybe they become messengers because there's an office that's operating in that particular home.
But what laws govern the work of domestic workers?
Domestic workers under the law are not treated any differently from other workers. There is this tendency to see or view domestic workers as a different category. And so some people do not think they're entitled to all the other terms and conditions that everybody is entitled to. So basically under the Employment Act covers all workers, including domestic workers.
The Employment Act guarantees domestic workers 21 annual leave days or 1.75 days accrued monthly, 3 months maternity leave for females, and 2 weeks paternity leave for males with full pay, 7 days of paid sick leave annually, having worked with their employer for a maximum of 2 months. After the 7 days lapse, the employee is only entitled to 7 other days within the year but on half pay. The Employment Act further entitles domestic workers to at least 1 day off a week.
Out of every 7 days, you have to get 1 day of rest. You'll find most domestic workers are given at least Sundays off, which is also in the law. So you're not doing them any favors. It's actually a legal requirement. Every person after working for a period of 7 days, you're supposed to go on. Or rather, in every 7-day period, you should have 1 day of rest.
The pay for domestic workers should not be below the minimum wage. Currently, the minimum wage for big cities including Nairobi, Kisumu and Mombasa is 13,572 shillings and 90 cents monthly or 653 shillings and 10 cents daily. For those working in big towns, it is 12,522 shillings and 70 cents monthly or 599 shillings and 55 cents daily, and the minimum wage in other areas stands at 7,240 shillings and 95 cents monthly or 367 shillings daily.
Most Kenyans they don't comply with this provision. And so you find many domestic workers complain almost on a daily basis. You'll be getting letters from labor officers complaining about, or rather informing you of a complaint that has been brought forward by a domestic worker for not being paid their minimum wage. So it's very common. Most, I would say perhaps 80 to 90% of households in Kenya probably do not comply with this minimum wage.
Failure to comply attracts a penalty of 100,000 shillings or 2 years imprisonment or both. Domestic workers also deserve minimum statutory rights as enshrined in the Employment Act, including income tax that's pay as you earn to be remitted to KRA, National Hospital Insurance Fund and National Social Security Fund. Domestic workers whose rights are violated can seek redress.
A domestic worker will complain. Usually they will complain to a labor officer. The labor officer will write to the former employer or the current employer and say, you have not been paying minimum wage. Other gray areas are like overtime, because many domestic workers work more than the stipulated, what you'd call normal working hours. And then there are also things like leave. They'll issue a demand letter. Most employers you will find will go ahead and make the payment or will enter into a settlement with the worker upon receiving the demand.
When a domestic worker has been terminated, they come to us for legal aid. Besides championing for rights of domestic workers, besides education, we organize domestic workers our key main objective so that when they have a problem, they come to us for legal assistance.
Domestic workers include cleaners, sweepers, gardeners, children's caregivers, house servants, day watchmen and messengers. Kenyans across all walks of life celebrated Labor Day yesterday. It is the hope of domestic workers that they too shall be considered like any other employee and receive the minimum wage as well as their statutory rights. Betty Kiptum, The Law.